Once upon a time, in a remote village nestled between vast mountains and endless forests, there lived a young boy named Kiran. The village was small, with only a few families, but the natural beauty surrounding it was breathtaking. Towering peaks shielded the valley from harsh winds, and the river that flowed through was clear and pure. Life there was simple, yet it carried its own set of challenges. Kiran had always been a dreamer, while the other children were content with playing games or helping their families with daily chores. Kiran's mind was often elsewhere. He would climb the tallest tree he could find, sit on a branch, and stare at the horizon for hours. To the others, it was strange. To him, it was freedom. He felt a strong pull towards something greater, something beyond the mountains, but he didn't know what it was. Every evening, after the sun had set, Kiran's grandfather would sit by the fire and tell stories of the world beyond the village. These stories were of great cities, vast oceans, and people who had accomplished remarkable feats. Kiran's eyes would widen with wonder, and his heart would race at the thought of exploring those distant lands. He wanted to be one of the people in his grandfather's stories, someone who achieved great things and made a difference in the world. But in the village, few understood his dreams. They told him that he should focus on more practical things, learning the family trade, farming the land, or becoming a shepherd. Kiran, however, could not shake the feeling that he was meant for something more. He didn't want to be confined by the boundaries of the village or by the expectations others had set for him. One day, while wandering near the forest's edge, Kiran stumbled upon an old, abandoned cottage. Curious, he ventured inside. The cottage was in ruins, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling and dust covering every surface. In the corner, he noticed a large, worn-out book. The cover was faded, and the pages yellowed with age. He picked it up, blew off the dust, and opened it. The book was filled with stories of ancient travelers, people who had journeyed across mountains, deserts, and seas. These travelers had faced immense challenges, but they never gave up. They climbed the tallest peaks, crossed the harshest deserts, and sailed through violent storms, all in pursuit of something greater than themselves. Kiran was captivated. Each page seemed to speak directly to him, as if the book had been waiting for him to find it. Over the next few days, Kiran returned to the cottage every chance he got. He read the book from cover to cover, and with each story, his determination grew stronger. He knew now that he wasn't alone in his desire for more. Others before him had felt the same way, and they had succeeded in their quests despite the odds. Kiran felt inspired and ready to take on the world, but the path ahead was not easy. He had no map, no guide, and no idea where to start. All he had was a burning desire to see what lay beyond the mountains. Late one night, he shared his thoughts with his grandfather. The old man listened carefully and nodded. He knew this day would come. The journey you're about to embark on will test you in ways you cannot imagine, his grandfather said. But remember, the greatest journeys are not the ones that lead you to faraway lands. They are the ones that lead you to discover who you truly are. Kiran pondered these words as he began to prepare for his journey. He gathered what little supplies he could, a small bag of food, a blanket, and a walking stick. On the day he was set to leave, the villagers gathered to bid him farewell. Some wished him luck, while others shook their heads, thinking he was chasing a foolish dream. But Kiran's resolve was unshakable. As he stood at the foot of the mountain, staring up at the towering peaks, doubt began to creep in. The path was steep, and the air was thin. It would be easy to turn back, to return to the comfort of his home and the familiarity of the village. But something inside him pushed him forward. The first few days of his journey were grueling. The terrain was rough and the weather unpredictable. At times, Kiran felt like giving up. His legs ached from climbing and his hands were blistered from gripping the rocks. But each time he felt like stopping, he remembered the stories from the old book. Those travelers had faced far worse and they had persevered. So, Kiran kept going. One evening, as he was setting up camp, he encountered a traveler heading in the opposite direction. The traveler was older, with a weathered face and kind eyes. They shared a meal by the fire and Kiran told him of his journey. The traveler listened intently, then said, "You remind me of myself when I was younger. I, too, left my village in search of something greater. And while I have seen many wonders, I've learned that the most important part of the journey is not what you find, but what you become along the way." These words resonated with Kiran, but he wasn't sure he fully understood them yet. Still, he thanked the traveler and continued on his way. Days turned into weeks and the journey grew more difficult. Kiran faced storms that threatened to blow him off the mountainside, wild animals that prowled in the night, and moments of complete loneliness. There were times when he questioned his decision, wondering if he had been foolish to leave the village. But each time doubt crept in, something would happen to remind him why he had started the journey in the first place. Whether it was the beauty of a sunrise over the peaks, the sound of a distant waterfall, or the memory of his grandfather's words, Kiran found the strength to continue. One day, after weeks of climbing, he reached the summit of the tallest mountain. From there, he could see for miles in every direction. The world stretched out before him, vast and full of possibilities. For the first time in his life, Kiran felt truly free. As he stood there, he realized something profound. The journey had changed him. He was no longer the same boy who had left the village. He was stronger, wiser, and more confident. The obstacles he had faced had shaped him into someone who could take on any challenge. But just as he was about to continue his journey, something caught his eye in the distance. It was a small flicker of light far beyond the horizon in a land he had never seen before. And suddenly, Kiran felt a surge of curiosity and excitement. The light beckoned him as if calling out to his very soul. It wasn't just a random spark in the distance. It felt purposeful, almost as if it had been waiting for him all along. For a moment he stood there, torn. He had come so far, overcome so many challenges, and now, standing at the peak of the tallest mountain, he had achieved what many thought was impossible. The world below him was vast and beautiful, full of mysteries waiting to be discovered. Yet that light in the distance, something about it felt different. It was more than just another destination. It felt like a key to understanding the purpose behind his entire journey. Kiran took a deep breath and began his descent down the mountain. The path to the distant light was unknown and would undoubtedly present new trials, but he was no longer afraid. His heart was filled with a sense of calm and certainty that whatever lay ahead, he was ready for it. Days passed and Kiran pressed on, crossing rivers, trekking through dense forests, and navigating treacherous valleys. The journey was just as challenging as the climb had been, but this time, something had changed. Kiran no longer felt the same burden of uncertainty and doubt that had weighed on him before. Every step felt purposeful, and the lessons from his past struggles empowered him to face each new obstacle with patience and determination. Along the way, he met other other travelers, each on their own journey. Some were heading home after long adventures, while others were just starting out, their eyes filled with the same wonder that Kiran once had. He shared his experiences with them, offering guidance when he could, and in return, he learned from their stories. He realized that everyone, no matter their path, had their own light they were chasing. Finally, after many weeks, Kiran arrived at the place where the light had been shining. It was a small, unremarkable village, much like the one he had come from. There were simple homes, people going about their daily lives, and children playing in the streets. Confused, Kiran wondered why he had been so drawn to this place. Was this truly what he had been searching for? As he walked through the village, an elderly woman sitting by a fountain called out to him. She had kind eyes, much like his grandfather's, and there was a warmth in her voice that put Kiran at ease. He sat beside her, and after a moment of silence, she spoke. "You've traveled far to get here," she said softly, "but I wonder, what is it you seek?" Kiran thought for a moment before replying, "I don't know anymore. I saw a light from the top of the mountain, and I thought it was leading me to something great, something that would give meaning to my journey." The woman smiled knowingly. "The light you saw wasn't from this village. It was from within you. It was your own inner fire guiding you. You see, the greatest journeys aren't about reaching a destination, they're about discovering who you are along the way." Kiran was silent as her words sunk in. He looked around the village once more and saw it differently now. It wasn't about the place itself but about what it represented. His entire journey had been about discovering his own strength, courage, and purpose. The light had never been some external goal, it had always been the realization of his own potential. The old woman continued, "You have the power to inspire others now, to help them find their own light. You've faced the mountains, the storms, and the loneliness, and now you stand here, not because you've reached the end, but because you've found your beginning." Kiran smiled, understanding at last. His journey wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. The lessons he had learned, the people he had met, and the obstacles he had overcome had shaped him into someone who could face whatever came next with confidence and grace. He thanked the old woman and rose to leave the village, his heart lighter than it had ever been. The world stretched out before him, full of possibilities. This time, however, he no longer felt the need to chase after distant lights. He knew now that the real journey was within, and with that knowledge, he was ready for whatever life had in store. As he walked away, the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the land. Kiran didn't need to look back. He knew that wherever he went, the light would always be with him. And so, with his head held high and his spirit renewed, Kiran continued his journey, not toward a destination, but toward the endless possibilities that awaited him, with the understanding that the true adventure had always been about discovering who he was and the strength that had been inside him all along.